Welcome to EuroTech Talks, a forum where Europe and Texas talk tech innovation across industries. Our theme today is 5G for Good, the benefits for business and society. My name is Erin McKelvey. I'm the Executive Director of the European American Chamber of Commerce, Texas. The European American Chamber of Commerce provides its members with access to transatlantic business opportunities, as well as timely and relevant information, resources, and support on matters affecting business activities between Europe and the US. This program is being recorded and will be available on the EACC YouTube channel in a few days. If you have questions for our speakers, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. I'm delighted to introduce our moderator today, Claire Burgaud, Director of Partners and Ecosystems Marketing at Nokia. Claire's experience spans over 25 years in management and IT consulting, business development, and sales and marketing for leading companies across diverse B2B industries. With expertise in engineering and marketing, she thrives in fast-paced environments that leverage new technologies, co-creation, innovation, and diversity. Claire is based in Dallas, Texas, is a board member of the Dallas International School PTO, and an alumni of the École Centrale Paris in France. With that, I will hand the program over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Erin, and good morning, afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today. I think we had a session about 5G 2 years ago, almost. So it's really a great time to regroup and talk about the new developments and the new opportunities or challenges, for about 5G. I have the honor to moderate this session, and I'm very pleased to welcome our three amazing speakers today and industry experts. So Matthew Wingo, Senior Manager, National Development Strategy at T-Mobile, Sandro Tavares, Director, Telecom Solutions Marketing at Dell Technologies, and Alessandro Di Salvo, Vice President, Mobile Network Sales Strategy and Development at Nokia. So let me introduce a little bit more our three speakers today. So as a leader in T-Mobile's national development activities, Matthew brings over 22 years of industry experience in developing wireless networks and in building solutions. Matthew's primary focus is on enterprise partnerships in development and application of technology for many industry verticals, such as automotive, retail, healthcare, oil and gas, and technology. Sandro joined Dell Technologies in January 2021, leading the team responsible for the marketing activities for the telecommunications market. Sandro brings more than 20 years of international experience in the telecom industry, with most of these years spent at Nokia, where he has served in sales and marketing positions, working in Brazil, Argentina, Finland, and the US. Alessandro's career in telecom spans 26 years, beginning as an R&D telecom engineer at Siemens before joining Nokia, where he has spent 18 years in Milan and 7 years in Dallas. Throughout his career, Alessandro has covered many positions, from customer service to product marketing, sales management, following various customers, and representing the network part, we could say, of Nokia business. Alessandro, Matthew, Sandro, anything you want to add at that moment?
You stated it well,
I'm honored to be here.
Okay. So now let's start our discussion. We are talking about 5G for good, meaning, for technology, business, and society. Communication service providers and ICT key players have played an essential role during the pandemic. I think there is no doubt about it, to keep the networks always on and secure business continuity in many and maybe all industries, as well as enable online education, remote working, remote medicine. So I would like to ask you, what are your key takeaways from this unique period of time, Matthew? And how would you qualify the role of 5G as being a catalyst to digitalization?
Thank you, Claire. I'd say one of the big key takeaways that we've learned over the past year or so is we've got to think beyond the office, beyond, in some cases, even the home. And it's about production anywhere. Regardless of your physical location, can you be productive and as productive as you could physically located at an office? And wherever your workforce is, wherever the production models take you, you need to keep that going and keep the business continuity and the ability to deliver and still function successfully, regardless of your location. So that can be on the road, at the home, in the office now. And I think we're seeing a transition of that to those needs they're out there now. And the technologies, the networks, the true mobility that 5G is bringing with the high speeds, high capacity, low latency, that's enabling us to be able to achieve that you're as productive anywhere, regardless of physical location.
Yes, I think this makes a ton of sense. So thanks, Matthew. Sandro, do you want to share your thoughts too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one point that is very clear is that this whole situation that we've been through really brought the importance of connectivity for all, right? So it is not very difficult to understand that if we didn't have the solutions that we have right now, if we didn't have the penetration of connectivity that we have today, the impacts of these of the pandemic and all of these awful situations that the world has been living through would have been even worse, right? It would impact the economies much more, right? So the importance of connectivity and the importance of how then we change the way we work is something that is here to stay, right? And then the point now is, how do we analyze what is the long-term impact of these changes in the economies in general, and how do we apply these learnings into all the verticals, into everything we do? I was reading an article yesterday that was really interesting about actually the impact of the work from home and the digital thinking and remote working is having on the job market per se, right? Because now companies, if they consider that you can have remote workers performing as well as local workers, and you don't actually have to have people in the office, now all of a sudden their hiring pool got expanded into the entire country. So a company that would only be hiring in Dallas, now they can hire anywhere, even outside the country, if that is possible from the legal point of view. So it is really changing the way the economy is going to move, and is really changing the way that each and every company is going to be operating in the future. And there is a learning that we need to make sure that it is applied, and that we take these as, if we can even say, something good that happened in the past couple of years, right?
Yes, absolutely. Alessandro?
Well, the way I would phrase it is that I believe the pandemic, what it's brought is an acceleration of the adoption of the digital technologies. And definitely this translated, what we see every day is an increasing demand of broadband equipment and services, and in particular, an increasing focus on 5G investment across the world. So in order to give, however, better context on this implication, I would like to cite one study from our Bell Labs. Basically, our research department basically studied the evolution of productivity growth rate since the 1900, so with the first and second industrial revolution. And what they noticed is that in 1951, we registered basically the peak of the growth rate of productivity. And that was in correspondence of a 51% adoption of physical technologies. So what we have actually ongoing today, I studied actually from after that, so after the 1950, is a digitization process. So, and this is, is evident in the communication sector. It is also now evident a bit more in the health and sanitation sector, but also in the production network, in the energy and transportation. This is ongoing. So what I want to highlight is that the context is that the pandemic bringing an acceleration of adoption of digital technologies will actually speed up the time in which we will see a peak of productivity. So those two things are really interlinked together.
Thanks, Alessandro. And I think, yes, what we've seen this year is that we could have thought with, the lockdowns and the slowdown of the economy that it would slow also the 5G deployments and investments, but no, actually we see that it's accelerating. So we've talked about productivity, but also we know that there are a lot of different surveys, showing that 5G net contribution to GDP growth is expected to be about, $2.3 trillion for 2035, and to contribute actively to our economic growth. And digital transformation represent a huge opportunity also for the telecom industry. We all get it. Telemedicine, self-driving cars, virtual reality, higher quality in home broadband, which is key actually, or we wouldn't be there, by the way, to talk all together. There are a lot of incredible benefits expected from 5G, but 5G, as an enabler, I would say. What is, from your perspective, the highest value that we can expect from 5G for tomorrow's business?
All right, so I continue on that. Actually, I think I read that the McKinsey estimated they had an high estimate of contribution from 5G of about $8 trillion by 2030. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly due to the different several industrial sectors. And that amount of money is basically equivalent to 10% of the global GDP in 2020. So having said that, I think that the highest value in terms of 5G benefits that we expect is actually related indeed to the digitization inside each and every industrial sector. And the way this happens, I think one of the biggest trends we see is that the build of a virtual digital twin that will allow basically to build a replica of the real world in order to simulate in a safe environment and try to predict any anomalies before they happen. This will help with this, if you think about the manufacturing context, this will allow actually to improve the uptime of the production lines and therefore, bring more efficiency, more productivity. Having said that, I think your question could be then, what is the role of 5G, to enable this one, right? So to help visualize, I think that building a virtual digital twin, for me, it means to blend together three different worlds. One is the sensor. And if we bring, the sensor in a mobile type of object, so robots, then it means wireless connection. It requires a wireless connection. So there is another component, which is the IoT wireless network. And then there is an artificial intelligence that allow to elaborate all the data and help suggesting, either detecting anomalies or helping, decision making. What 5G is bringing in this is very important. It's bringing a convergence of technology between the telco and the IT, as all the software functions will now run first in a cloud environment, which is already well developed, and at the same time, even on premises or at the edge of the network. So very close where we need the application to run to offer the real-time, quality of service. Now, having said that, again, this means that running in the same hardware environment, in the same cloud software environment, these software that today are running in silos, tomorrow can communicate to each other. and can exchange data. This means that the blend of these things will enable the formation of this the virtual digital twin. The second key critical feature that to enable this that is brought by 5G compared to other technology like 4G is the build of what we call ultra reliable low latency communication service. What it is, so we need to think that we as a human beings, interact in hundreds of milliseconds. So for example, if you're driving a car, you find, an emergency situation, a danger, and you need to, brake, the reaction time between when you see the danger and when you brake, it is actually, if you measure it, it will be, a bit more than 100 milliseconds. When we want to enable, communication between machines, for example, teleoperation or a medicine or a a surgeon, operating remotely, they need haptic feedback. That haptic feedback to the surgeon requires 10 milliseconds from the network perspective in terms of latency. And there are other use cases like autonomous vehicle. Well, that will require even 1 millisecond latency from the network, from the networking perspective. So this is, a critical features in order to enable, indeed, and this is what 5G is bringing into this the conversation.
Thanks, Alessandro. Matt, yeah,
sure. I was going to say that was great, Alessandro. One of the things, I think a key word for 5G is personalization. You're mentioning different use cases across different industry verticals. And for the first time, we're seeing that it's not one size fits all in wireless. It's not, here's a wireless signal, figure out what you can do with it. With everything that's coming, you mentioned IoT, mobile edge compute, private networks. All of those are customized to the industry we work with. If we're dealing with oil and gas, we're dealing with education, healthcare, retail, they are all looking at different applications. And it's fun to be out there in the marketplace because everybody wants 5G, but they may or may not necessarily know what they want it for. So we're at such the leading edge of a lot of these technologies. It's allowing us to develop partnerships and say, hey, let's develop these use cases for your industry, the application specific to how it could best benefit you. And it's an unprecedented time in wireless industry with the amount of licensed frequencies we have available that have never been open before, and we're continuing to grow that. And I think that's a key feature that is coming with the expanded bandwidth, the expanded capacity that's out there to be able to support these. But it is exciting to run these trials and work and partner alongside the different industries. And I think we're going to see entirely new modes of operating come out of this because of these developments, because of the innovation that's happening. And I know we like to speak that, hey, we can think of a lot of different ideas of how this could be utilized, but it's so important to hear the feedback from each of those verticals and how they could see, or what are the gaps we can fill for them.
Yeah, and just to complement, I think that Alessandro and Matthew, they talked a lot about great use cases and the great possibilities that will come with 5G. The only thing I would add is that we really need to be careful not to fall into a situation of paralysis by analysis, right? As an industry in general. There is this trend about, or this tendency around trying to figure out, okay, what is the killer application? How we are going to make sure that this has a huge pickup immediately. And the reality is that we don't know, and we're probably not going to know what is like the killer application for a good time. And the reason why I say that is that when we started with 4G, right? And when we were having like the very initial discussions of 4G, or bringing 4G to the market back in like 2008, 2009, no one knew like the vast majority of the app that you have on your smartphone today, right? All of these business models, all of these new companies that popped up, you name it, Uber, even like the growth that Netflix had and so on, that was not part of the plan. It came because the technology was there, the technology brought new capabilities, and then innovation came and used these as tools to create new cool services and to generate revenues and generate wealth in general. The same old thing will happen with 5G, right? So what is important is that we kick the ball, we start actually building the applications that we know now and start experimenting with technology, and that we open up for not only the traditional telecom community, but also other players, they come to start experimenting and innovating with technology. Because I'm fully convinced that what 4G was for consumers, 5G will be for the enterprise market, for industries, for the economy in general.
Thanks, Sandro. And I see we have questions, but Gael, I think we will have some time to take the questions at the end of the session.
Yes, we will.
Okay. Yes, so maybe my question is, okay, that's great. That sounds all great. Where do we stand today with 5G? Mm-hmm. Where are we? And how do you see 5G deployments moving, going forward? There have been a lot and numerous 5G deployments across the world, but what can you share about 5G deployments and next steps? And maybe in reality, what main use case will come first? Is it for the consumer, for enterprises? Also, 5G is not only, an additional G or new technology. It's really, so it requires certainly, some help, some support from regulators, some investments. There are a lot of questions around security, data privacy too, because it's moving also to that data-centric world, I would say, or full data-fueled new world. So what are the main drivers moving forward and maybe the threats to 5G deployments? Sandro, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So if you look into where we are right now, I think that we're still at the very first phase of 5G deployments out there. There is still a lot of progress that has to be done all over the world in terms of spectrum availability. Here in the US, we're going the right direction towards that, because to really build an efficient 5G coverage, you need spectrum in all bands, basically. So you need like the lower band spectrum so you can build like wide coverage. You need high band spectrum so you can deploy all of these ultra high speed capabilities, but you also need a little bit in the middle, which here we call the C-band spectrum, which is kind of the best of both worlds, right? It provides coverage and it provides capacity as well. So this is the first step. Lots of countries are taking the right decisions in terms of allocating spectrum, and I do expect that spectrum pretty soon is not going to be like the main issue in most of the more developed countries. And you can see that spectrum auctions are starting to happen and are well underway in developing countries as well. So this is the first thing. When you look into like what is the primary application, where it will happen first. If you look into the case here for the US, it has been consumer mobile broadband. That is the low-hanging fruit, right? Because it's basically the same service that service providers, telecom operators, they always sold. However, if we limit ourselves to that, we're not really even scratching the surface of the possibilities of 5G. So what really is going to make a difference in the future are all of these advanced applications that Matthew and Alessandro talked about. So enabling new use cases, enabling automation in several different verticals. So this is really what 5G is going to bring to the picture. Mobile broadband and faster YouTube videos and Netflix binge watching, it's all great. It's still going to be there. But all of these other applications that will require low latency, that will probably require a part of the network capacity being dedicated to them, like, for example, the case of a remote surgery that you don't want it to be interrupted by a kid playing Fortnite, right? Those are really the cases that are going to be driving the industry in the future, right?
Right. Alessandro, do you want to?
Well, just to add on top of what Sandra has just said, I think I would like to take maybe a different angle. What the 5G, what we need to expect from 5G, like I said before, is actually this convergence between the IT and telco. And even within telco, we see a convergence between fixed and mobile services, because for what 5G is bringing is a simplified architecture and into a merged cloud environment. So what we see actually, if I take the angle of value chain, is that we see a trend in which all these silos value chain, where we all compete today, in a sense, are slowly evolving towards a unique, highly complex value chain in which everybody wants to have a stake. And because of that, I think that what we will see changing in the future, because none of us has the competencies in each and every part of the value chain. So we see more and more partnership becoming a de facto way to differentiate even, or to compete into the market. And we see this already happening, and with many actors that you didn't think before. And not only in terms of partnership, even, industrial, company that are investing in telco business and in telco vendors. So, we will see that 5G is bringing, besides the technology, basically this, nearly, unified sort of value chain model in which, we will, need to try to leverage the competence of each other in order to succeed and add value to the ultimate, customers that will use the technology.
Yes, absolutely. So collaboration ecosystems will be key for the development of 5G. And what about money, Alessandro?
All companies are driven by money, right? So it's, we need to deliver profit, and this is a common, a common things. But what we believe we see more and more, increasing role coming is from the policymaker. So we all want, to get a stake into the new value chain. Of course, we want to make more money. We want to be successful. But the reality is that there will be an increasing critical role from policymaker to make sure that the money flow in the right, in the right direction for a right cause. And there are examples already for that. It's known that we have, there is a global shortage of chips and components. Here we go. U.S. government is allocating funds for chips and manufacturers to fund the research and development in order to overcome the obstacle. It's quite evident that if we want to increase the adoption of digital technology, we need to reach everybody. And this, bring the challenge of rural America and the digital dividend in general all over the world. So here we go. U.S. government, is allocating funds in order to help, service provider and vendors actually to go after areas that otherwise there will be no business case justifying the deployment for. So it becomes more and more increasingly important, the role of policymaker, in order to make sure that this happens, all this money that everybody's looking for, it goes at the benefits of the world and and everybody.
Thanks, Alessandro. Matthew, T-Mobile,
Sure.
it's a key player in 5G.
So spectrum obviously is a critical factor, and I agree with Sandro. Eventually, we'll get critical mass. Although as soon as we think we're good, new use cases pop up. So that's always an ongoing challenge. But spectrum clearing is a big one. The availability of it and the ability to utilize it. I would say infrastructure is another one. What about the backbones for all of these? And you're absolutely right. We're moving to a seamless technology where to the end user or the end device, it needs to be seamless. It doesn't matter if it's a combination of IT or direct wireless or whatever that application of bringing the service to the end user is. It needs to be seamless, and that they can seamlessly go between the two. And I think that infrastructure is going to be critical to helping that. In the major metropolitan areas, our fiber infrastructure to run the backbone is significant. And and there's fiber availability, but there's a big gap when you move into the rural areas. And so there's other challenges to bring those same services and expand beyond the metropolitan area and the suburbs and getting them out into the more rural areas. And that's a unique challenge, just making sure that infrastructure is there and support it. I think another thing is the speed of deployment. Being able to actually get these deployed as rapidly as the industry needs it out there, and keeping up with that. And there's a combination of regulatory in that, there's entitlements, there's just deployment timelines of actually getting it out there. But it all adds up into how quickly can we get this out to the market and live and active for the end users to take advantage of all these great benefits we've been speaking of.
Yeah, robust and scalable infrastructures for sure. Having this being said now, and sustainability, especially after this pandemic in the new normal, has become a number one priority for everyone and for all industries and enterprises and also. So what role will 5G play in building this better world, bridging the digital divide, as you just mentioned, Matthew? For we are talking about cities versus rural, but it's also about developed markets versus emerging markets. So how will this help to bridge the digital divide? How will 5G help also to contribute to the climate change objectives?
So let me. With the climate change side in energy, that's a big topic. We're moving to electric vehicles and different alternative fuels. And I think, a recent study showed that 5G is 90% more efficient, up to 90% more efficient on power consumption. The devices bringing these services out there are smaller, lighter, faster, and they are more energy conscious in there and energy friendly. Smart buildings, right? The ability of a building to optimize its environmental and power controls based on analytics of usage, demand need. It's really demand-based, occupancy-based applications, as opposed to the entire building needs to be heated or cooled. Even maintenance staff that are monitoring and reducing the time spent troubleshooting, and take it beyond the smart building to smart grids. There was a study, I think Accenture came out and said that the benefits of smart grids can lead to up to $2 trillion in savings over the next 20 years, which is a huge amount, and the potential to do that. And then you take it into the smart cities on those smart grids and traffic patterns. Maybe there's less idle time, there's enhanced traffic flow, and the machine learning and the machines are able to help analyze, hey, this doesn't have to be a fixed traffic flow all the time. It can be demand-based as well.
Yeah, basically picking up on that, I think the other angle, and of course, like the energy efficiency angle is extremely important, but I like to look into sustainability also through the angle of how you sustain the economy and how you grow the economy, right? And I think it's no secret to anyone that 5G became a topic of basically state policy all over the world, right? So it is really about becoming, becoming competitive on 5G and having actually your industry being transformed to become more agile, more efficient based on 5G technologies became a matter of the competitiveness of the economies, right? So this is an area that is for sure very important. But then on top of that, when you're talking about digitally transforming the economy, launching new services, optimizing the way that production is made, creating new domains inside your own economy, it comes another topic, which is training the workforce, right? And 5G can play actually a huge role, not only in helping countries bridge the digital divide, so we can get to a situation where everybody is really connected. And as you know, even here in the US, we still have a pretty significant gap in terms of coverage of broadband connectivity, and even like the availability of digital literacy for everybody. So 5G can be a very significant tool to, first of all, bridge the digital divide from the connectivity point of view, but also to be utilized as the underlying technology that will help us train the workforces that are coming in the future, right? So with 5G combined with technologies like AR, VR, you can really scale significantly the ability of train the workforce and prepare basically the entire economy to be operating under these new scenarios. So I think that sustainability, of course, like as I said, energy and global warming and so on, this is all very important, but it is also about how we sustain ourselves as a society and how we continue growing the economy in a world, in a scenario that is under a significant transformation. I believe that 5G has a pretty significant role in enabling that.
Thanks, Sandro. Alessandro?
Well, excellent aspect. For me, whenever I hear sustainability, I always think about more on the global scale about what we usually call emerging markets. So I would like as well to shift a little bit the attention into countries basically where with low GDP, where connectivity is a de facto issue, where broadband is a luxury, and and where even criminality rate is very high, as well as corruption. So I think that the question of sustainability for me is what we as a technology enabler can do in order to accelerate the increase of productivity and the welfare of those countries. And if I pause for a moment and I think about what the pandemic, back to your first question, what the pandemic has taught us, I believe, let me tell you this one, before the pandemic, we thought that to work, you needed an office space, even a big one, in our imagination, we imagine, really big office, very comfortable, very expensive, right? And with people that have to commute to the office. The second aspect is that what the pandemic has taught us is that before that, every salesperson, in order to meet a customer, right, typically for an hour meeting, he or she had to prepare, himself or herself, the day before, packing, commuting to the airport, waiting to board, flying, landing, commute, and maybe prepare the meeting with the internal, with the colleagues, and then commute to the customer premises, have a meeting, and then again, when the meeting is finished, again, everything, debriefing and, flying, etc. So during the pandemic, what did salesperson, people did? My experience is that they started to generate new meetings internally and externally. And since it was virtual, they invited more people. So what we see in a nutshell is that what I learned is that what is increased is the collaboration. And this brought new ideas, more preparation, less time wasted. Ultimately, I believe the pandemic brought an increase of productivity, even in the way we do work every day. Now, what does it, what's the link with these emerging markets? Now, what I want to believe is that if we can bring into emerging markets better connectivity, in a more sustainable way, like Matt is saying, 5G as 90%, more energy efficient, and has the promise as well to connect more people and more objects, in a more efficient way. So if we can bring that there, I want to believe that there will be sooner or later a genius entrepreneur that will try to leverage that by making people working from their village. They don't have a car to commute. They don't need to build the cost of an office, expensive, office space. And in this way, they can increase the overall education level of the country. They can actually produce something, whether it is service or product even. And this will ultimately then contribute to the increase of GDP that ultimately will contribute in the long run with the decrease of criminality and corruption. So I think, technology itself, and if we focus in the right area to create this sustainability for the whole world, I think the benefits is visible in terms of, and let's remember what I said before, the Bell Lab study is saying, hey, we need to reach an adoption of digital technology of 51% to see this peak of productivity. And therefore, this reflects in the welfare. So it's very important that we actually don't forget about countries where, there are, still a lot of issues to be solved, or, where the progress has to be accelerated, and technology plays a role.
Thanks, Alessandro. And there are already some real cases, real wins that we can already share in smart aquaculture, smart agriculture, in education too. I'm thinking about also, these schools in Kenya that we connected with Nokia and the UNICEF. So I think maybe we can go to the questions, Gael. I see there are several. Do you want to share them, or should I go to the chat? And
you can, if you have access to the chat, you can go there. If that's fine for you.
So the first question is from Patrick Ettner to the panel. Could you help understand how 5G is making new capabilities possible beyond a human on his or her smartphone, streaming YouTube faster? I think, Sandro, you touched on this. Do you want to take the question?
Oh yeah, I can certainly provide a little bit more color, right? So it's all about creating new applications and new use cases that leverage the aspects, the key characteristics of the 5G network, which is like a lot of data throughput capacity, very low latency, and so on. And the applications will vary. As I pointed out, some of them we don't know yet and will know in the future, but like to touch upon a few. So on the consumer side, gaming is something that is actually positively impacted by 5G, especially if you think about a setup of cloud gaming where gamers do not necessarily have to make the investment of buying a console or buying a gaming computer or buying a specific title. They can use that basically as a service coming from the cloud that requires high data capacity, low latency. So that is probably like the biggest consumer case that we have right now. On the enterprise side, there is a huge variety. Some of them were touched upon today in the area, for example, of industry automation. So digital twins showing in real time what is happening in a factory floor, controlling and allowing also a factory to have all of its robots, all of its machines being wirelessly connected to the 5G network. So it is easier to reconfigure the production line whenever needed as well. Cases like, for example, there was another question talking about drones that we can talk in more details later, but like controlling drones. There is one case that Nokia did in Finland that is a drone that is monitoring the waters of the Baltic Sea for pollution or overgrowth of algae. So it is 5G, not only connecting the drone, but bringing the footage faster so it can be analyzed in a video analytics application. So these are all kind of initial applications that we have right now. But the important thing is we have to start experimenting with these initial applications, leveraging this open and wider community of developers to come up with new applications as well. So, 5 years from now, we have the exact same effect that we're seeing with 4G right now. That, lots of the apps that I have on my phone, I had no clue about them a few years ago. And I think the same will happen with 5G.
Thanks, Sandro.
Yeah.
So the next question is certainly for you, Matthew. What does 5G change to the current low coverage areas in the Metroplex?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What does 5G change to the current low coverage areas of the Metroplex in Dallas? What would 5G change? Yeah.
So, well, I think it's a combination of factors. It's not only reach. We mentioned the different band differences, but we've seen an increase in reach out to rural and remote areas with the low band ability, and to even be able to bring the latest evolution out into that it's 5G. I think that's one. I think another is really to Sandro's last point too about the different use cases as they come in. It's about putting more devices on with a better experience than they're having today, right? And it continues to grow. I mean, in this area in particular, there are so many different industries represented in such a major area that we see the demand curve definitely climbing for the need for this. And I think 5G is going to be critical to be able to support that demand curve and in these custom applications that come across. And Dallas is definitely, I believe, on the forefront of some of these deployments, not only because it seems to be a good test bed with a lot of different entities doing different trials here, but it's such a hub of commerce and business and enterprise that we're seeing a lot of the demand right here in Dallas, and it does extend out beyond the city limits proper and going out into some of the more remote areas.
Thanks, Matthew. So the next question, with ubiquitous broadband mobile connectivity, how do you foresee 5G helping to simplify individual lives for universal adoption of the technology? Alessandro, you want to take this one?
Right. It's not only about connectivity, right? So connectivity remains, I think, a key point, like we said, in terms of extending the reach of today, in areas where are unserved, underserved. I want to believe that, to improve or to see benefits in terms of different things or evolve, more enhanced things, I think we need to think also in relation to the first question that Sandro was mentioning, is that it's not only about the smartphone. I think smartphone has captured the attention of the last 10 years, but we're already moving beyond smartphone. So we need to think about the 5G is bringing more and more the capability to enable new devices. So we already have smartwatch, we have devices, connected via Bluetooth to our smartphone that send data about our fitness status or EKG or whatever. But we need to think that, 5G will bring the possibility to wear goggles for mixed reality without feeling nausea. And so basically we'll make, what we will need to expect is that in the market, we will see more and more in the future, many more devices connected that will improve the way we consume connectivity in a different manner. So more enabling other senses, like augmented reality goggles, for the sight, and instead of watching a screen. And even there are already technology that are under work that are interpreting the gestures of people, so that by moving the hands, you can also communicate and do comments and other stuff. So plus artificial intelligence, last but not least, is able even interpreting our mood from camera. So no matter what we trying to appear or pretend to be, artificial intelligence will be able to actually detect the real status of our mood and so on. So, the most important things is that we need to understand that, at least this is what I believe, that in the innovation, there is always a positive intent about technology, about improving our life, our lifestyle. And this is the spirit of every innovator every day. So I would, I'm not sure that I'm answering fully the question, but, as far as I understand, this goes much beyond the connectivity, what 5G is enabling. It's just because the technology itself is bringing new services, let's say, feasible to implement and to build into a commercial stage.
Thanks, Alessandro. It was more about simplification of our lives, but I think you answered perfectly to the question. And the next one, I think, so there was something about the drones. We already mentioned it, but I think this one is really interesting. Can companies set up their own 5G to provide connectivity across a larger campus or outside the buildings? And this is a great question, as we have a lot of private network deployments also on the play. Sandro, you want to take it?
Yeah, I can take it. So yeah, absolutely, right? So there is the possibility of building private wireless networks. And there's basically two ways that you can do that, right? So that can be done directly by a company, provided that they do have license or access to unlicensed spectrum, or they do have, depending on the country, some countries may actually provide licenses for chunks of spectrum also for enterprises. But like the most straightforward aspect would be build the 5G coverage if done directly by a company using an unlicensed solution. And there are several solutions out there on the market that would cater for these needs, right? But then the other option is to really partner with a service provider as well, right? So a company like T-Mobile, where they can actually be your partner to build a private network for the company, right? So that can be done either by really building a segregated network, physically segregated network with radio solutions being deployed specifically for that company in their campus or building, or that can also be done via a network slice, right? Where the service provider basically is selling a service, which is a slice of the public network that guarantees the connectivity that is required by this company that is their client, regardless of what happens around. So you have always a dedicated slice of the network that is then deployed for the applications that that company will use. This is a feature that came with 5G. Some companies are also able to do some aspects of that on 4G as well, but this is a key characteristic of 5G that is also available for companies that want to build their own networks.
Thanks, Sandro. I see this question, it could be the conclusion word. What is the main challenge for the 5G technology to expand, and what 6G could look like? I like this one. Who wants to take it? Matthew?
I'll take that one. 6G. So this is my fourth G of wireless evolution I've been a part of in my time in the industry, and 6G makes me sweat already. Just the idea, since we're still deploying 5G, but the main challenges today, I think we addressed a little bit of them in one of our points with, it's the availability of spectrum. Just because the spectrum is there, it's not necessarily cleared in all markets, in all areas, because it's still being used by another industry that may be vacating that frequency band, but they haven't vacated yet. So you can run into some delays there with 5G that's just not accessible yet. We know it's going to be available, but you can't yet get to it until it's cleared. And then the infrastructure is a big thing, depending on where you're at. And really, it's just the build out. I know the 5G build out. I know with T-Mobile, we are aggressively building out 5G nationally. And so getting it out there speed of market wise, we're definitely doing that. You're still impacted by the overall larger industry. And, is the spectrum clear in this market? And is it available yet and clear to use and deploy on? So in some cases, you may deploy through a market and then you come back and add to it. It's definitely an and statement with 5G frequencies. It's not this band or this band. It's going to take all of the bands to really do and be successful with these use cases. I love the question about 6G. That's great. I think the one commonality in my experience, we have the same three pillars we really push, but it's a true growth of those pillars in every wireless G evolution, the generational evolution. And it's higher speed, it's higher capacity, and it's even less latency. And so while the applications may not be there today to fully say, hey, this is how we're going to use it from a 6G perspective, and there's still talk about what it may actually look like, it's going to be built on some combination of improving those, right? Faster speeds, more capacity, and even less latency. that's out there, and that's going to help everything from this continual evolution from autonomous vehicles to anything related to high-speed life safety protocols, public safety, anything related to that. The super low latency and capacity are definitely going to help.
Thanks. As it looks like a conclusion word, I want to hear Sandro maybe and Alessandro also share their thoughts there, and I will hand over to Erin.
Right.
Yeah. So from my side, I think that kind of the final point here is that 5G is not really just another G. I mean, just like Matthew, I've been around since 2G, and the evolution in all of these have been pretty much linear. I think with 5G, we start taking an exponential curve in terms of capabilities that it brings and really the transformational power that it brings to the picture. However, that requires our industry to transform, right? To be able to pick up with the technology and to really make the most out of it. Because otherwise, I mean, it's still just going to be another evolution of mobile broadband that we're going to be using to, watch cat videos on YouTube, which nothing wrong with cat videos, but that's not what it was made for, right? So there is it enables significant transformation, but it also puts on us as an industry a big task of actually leveraging this technology to transform the way we work and help really benefit the society with everything that 5G can bring to the picture. So those are my final words.
All right. In Nokia, our mission is to create the technology to allow the world to act together. And this is important because, as I said, throughout, the panel of today, I think, 5G is bringing new innovation on the table and is building, responsibility increasing for policymakers, but also more partnership among, different, players between, the traditional IT space and telco space, between, public cloud providers and, vendors and service providers. So what is important is really this collaboration. We see that increases as very important. And, and as a last word, in terms of importance, let's remind ourselves that, people who make innovation every day, there's always a positive intent in that. So, and again, this is a responsibility for all of us in the different worlds and sectors that we live and work for to actually act together.
Thanks, Alessandro. This is great. And I really want to thank you, gentlemen. It was really a nice discussion. Erin, up to you. Is Erin on mute? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was a great discussion. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all of the questions today. There's a lot to explore. And it's just a pleasure for me to be able to bring our EuroTech Talks series back. And we look forward to having more in the future. I know, really, I hope that everyone can have a very just happy and relaxing and productive summer. And then we'll all get back to a lot of great events this fall and in-person events finally. So thank you, Alessandro, Matthew, Sandro.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Want to thank all the people who helped us organize this event. And I've already had comments on my phone for people thanking me for such a great discussion today. A few people came in late, so they missed quite a bit. But if you are an EACC member and would like to be introduced to any of our guests today, please send me an email. I'll be happy to facilitate an introduction. And if you're interested in membership or need to be added to our mailing list, you can do that on the eacctx.com website. And I believe we will call it a day. Thank you, Claire, for wonderful moderation today. Just excellent job. We look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.